Bienvenidos a este último bloque del cuarto Congreso Internacional de Arte Indai 2023. Bienvenidos. Este bloque va a ser un bloque bilingüe donde se hablará sobre la literatura anglosajona y también la literatura hispana. Estamos teniendo un poco de problemas con internet, así que disculpen los pequeños fallos. Pero les quiero contar que este congreso cuenta en esta edición con 328 participantes en diferentes áreas del arte. Además de estos conversatorios y presentaciones, contamos también con una gran exposición que se divide en dos partes. La primera del 1 al 15 de agosto y la segunda del 17 al 31 de agosto, donde exponen, en este momento expondrán en la segunda exposición, escultores, pintores, artistas plásticos, fotógrafos y escultores. Así que muchas gracias a todos por vernos, por seguirnos, y vamos a dar entrada al coordinador de este bloque, Darío Aguilar Peregrina, escritor mexicano.
Muchas gracias, Graciela.
Hola Darío, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, aquí emocionado de nuevo por otra oportunidad y pues coordinar este evento contigo.
Muchísimas gracias. Vamos a dar paso a las otras participantes, Brenda y Stacy. Hola Brenda, hi Stacy.
Hola.
Hello Stacy, hello Brenda. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Bien, los voy a dejar para comenzar.
Ok. Amigos y amigas, de nuevo estamos aquí en otro bloque de este espacio Indai de este año. Y bueno, antes de empezar esta gran sesión de hoy, quiero presentarles a estas dos grandes escritoras. I want to present you these two great writers, friends of mine. The first one is from North Carolina, member of the Society of Historians also, and I think she's an award-winning author, I think. Well, also she is host of the Writing Wall podcast and co-host of Literature Today. She is the one and only Stacy Hawks. Welcome back, Stacy.
Hello, Dario. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Stacy. Amigos y amigas, Stacy Hawks una vez más nos acompaña aquí en este gran bloque de Indai y por supuesto ya saben, es nuestra también presentadora de literatura actual y muy buena escritora de diversos libros en Carolina del Norte. And now I want to present you Brenda Rachik. Brenda Rachik, if you permit me, Brenda, is a Mexican horror author. She majored in international relations and also she is going to write she wrote a short story called When la Muerte Visits, When the Dead Visits. Also, her work has appeared in Collective Visions anthologies and the Raiders and Roses short story collection Mitos around the world. Amigos y amigas, un placer de nuevo tener a esta gran escritora, Brenda Ratchke, con nosotros. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Darío, muchas gracias.
De nada, Brenda. Well, amigos y amigas, vamos a empezar con esta ronda de preguntas que le haré a las dos grandes escritoras y, por supuesto, esta inspiración que tenemos nosotros, la cultura anglosajona y la latina. Now I'm going to ask these questions to these great two writers, where I will ask the creative inspiration in the literature of the United States and the Latin American one. Well, the first one question is going to be for Stacy, if you permit it. Stacy, primera pregunta para ti. Esta es la siguiente. Stacy, what were your inspirations for writing? ¿Cuáles fueron tus inspiraciones para escribir?
So my inspirations for writing, especially for writing historical fiction, is some of the most fascinating stories and the most interesting stories that come from my hometown and they come from my local area here in Northwestern Appalachia. I really enjoy showcasing different aspects of the community and the people and places that are part of all that along the way. So you could say, you know, newspapers, stories that I've heard through the years, things like that. Those are always a great point of inspiration for my stories.
Okay, thank you so much, Stacy. Amigos y amigas, Stacy nos acaba de comentar que sus inspiraciones principalmente vinieron de estos medios físicos, como periódicos. Y sin duda ella es una gran escritora en cuanto a la literatura de ficción histórica, que sin duda es increíble sus libros, por cierto. And now, Brenda, your turn. What were your inspirations for writing?
Dario, I've always been a reader, but I haven't always been a writer. And I think it took a lot of reading to become inspired, because there was a point in my journey as a reader that I thought, this is it. You know, I've read every story out there because they all follow the same formula and it's becoming boring. But then I started to read them more broadly and I found some books that were out of the format. For example, The Wielding Hall by Elizabeth Hand, which is about a band that goes to an artist's retirement on a haunted house. And it is written as a documentary script. And reading that sort of books made me realize that there were more things that I could do with literature, and it made me want to write. Bueno, Darío, la verdad es que siempre me ha gustado leer, pero no siempre he sido escritora. Hubo un punto en el que me sentí abrumada por leer siempre la misma fórmula. Me gustaba mucho la fantasía cuando era niña, pero pues la verdad es que todas siguen el Hero's Journey. Entonces dije, no, pues ya me aburrí y de repente me empecé a encontrar estos libros maravillosos que salían de la estructura tradicional, eran muy experimentales y eso me inspiró mucho a hacer mis propias cosas y a querer crear algo diferente. También dije, pues si estoy aburrida, debo de yo hacer algo para brindar pues una nueva perspectiva en el mundo de la literatura.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Muchísimas gracias, Brenda. Como ven, estas inspiraciones son distintas. O sea, el camino del héroe, esta ficción histórica se combinan. As you can see, we have different perspectives. We have the Joris hero and also the historical fiction that Stacy, again, I'm going to praise you because I'm going to talk about that later, but your book was amazing. The next question for Stacy. What do you do to prepare a new story, Stacy? ¿Qué haces para preparar una nueva historia?
So to prepare writing a historical fiction story, the first thing I'll do is I'll consider what time period I want that story to be set in, how far in the 1930s, which is kind of my specialty at the moment, do I want that story to begin? So my first novel was set in 1937, and the second one was set a little earlier in 1930 to 32. The third one went back to 1937 so that we could include some of the same characters as the first two books to finish out the series. So the next novel is going to be set a little earlier. It's going to be set in kind of late 20s, early 30s. And then I decide on the characters, their names, their professions, their personalities. And then afterwards, it's about structuring the story and doing events so that I know how the chapters will flow.
Okay, thank you so much, Stacy. Pues amigos y amigas, nos acaba de comentar Stacy que esta preparación para sus historias se basa en esto de investigar bien a los personajes. En este caso, sus libros abarcan los años 20 y 30, así que tiene que investigar bastante estos personajes con tal de darles una personalidad que ya está establecida porque son históricos, valga la redundancia, y sobre todo, pues darles este formato excelente que hace. And now the same question, Brenda. What do you do?
Well, I think I don't write historical fiction. I only write horror. So part of my process is to write a bit and then I let it sit for a while. And call me superstitious, but whenever I let an idea sit for some time, the outside world will start throwing material to help with my story. Um, so for me, the key is to let the story sit within you and remember the story is the most important thing. Like readers are there for the story. They don't care how smart you are or if you manage to memorize the flags of every country in the world or any other of that stuff. Like the vital part for me is to focus on the characters and I outline a bit, but I am always flexible to change my outline if it doesn't make sense for the characters. Pues
Okay.
para mí lo principal es pensar en los personajes y escribir un poco y luego dejar que la historia se asiente. Y pues no sé si sea superstición, pero cuando empiezo a pensar en una historia, el mundo exterior empieza a lanzarme mensajes y cosas. Por ejemplo, estaba haciendo un cuento sobre un hombre que se hace planta y empecé a encontrar en antologías algunos cuentos que se referían a plantas y entonces me empezaron a dar como muchísimo vocabulario para crear mi historia. Fue muy, muy divertido y siempre me pasa con todos mis proyectos. Entonces, sí, mi consejo es esperar un poco y dejar que en tu propia mente florezca la historia.
Muchísimas gracias, Brenda. Uh, Guys, as you can see, again, two different perspectives. Stacy is a master of historical fiction, and Brenda is a master in the horror genre, I think. Again, the most important thing I think you saw is investigation. Investigation, working the characters, working on their personalities, the development of the story is also important because if you don't develop the story fully, I think as you said, Brenda and Stacy, I think the readers are going to be confused, maybe, or maybe are going to tell this story isn't that great, ¿no? Amigos y amigas, les comento a Stacy y a Brenda que efectivamente, al final de cuentas, sea el género que tú intentes, pues te tienes que inspirar en esto de la creatividad, de investigar estos personajes, desarrollar lo mismo, ¿no? Porque si no hacemos eso, pues al final de cuentas no es una historia llamativa. On my case, Brenda and Stacy, when I prepare a new story, basically I normally investigate, as you told me, but also I like to create new things. For example, I don't know if you remember when George Lucas was writing Star Wars, he said, I wrote a bunch of names and I later talk about if they worked in the story. So normally I do that when writing stories like this, but at the end of the day it's investigation and development. Amigos y amigas, le comento a Stacy y a Brenda que, pues a final de cuentas yo también, para mi proceso creativo como escritor, pues es poner estos nombres, estas creatividades que luego uno se le ocurre y hacer estas historias fantásticas, ¿no? A final de cuentas, son diferentes géneros. Yo escribo más I write more of J.I. Trilogies or sagas, but I also love horror and historical fiction with these two great friends. And now the next question, Stacy, what are your favorite genres to read and write? ¿Cuáles son tus géneros favoritos para leer y escribir?
So my favorite genres to read and write are historical fiction, true crime, biographies, and mysteries. And I write a mix of each. I have enjoyed writing historical fiction, true crime, and a bit of mystery twist thrown in. as well as including biographical information for my characters, like my main characters, the Sheriff Walter Irwin and Sheriff Robert Bruce McMillan. Both are real people, and there are real people throughout my stories, and you get to learn more about their occupations, their real occupations, and what they were doing, such as our newspaper editor, Mrs. Gamble, and a bunch of others that show up throughout the series. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun to read and write, and then also include those within your books.
Absolutely, Stacy. I love the character of Robert Bruce McMillan in your latest book. So, thank you again for that book. Amigos y amigas, Stacy nos acaba de contar que estos géneros que le gustan son pues la ficción histórica, valga la redundancia, historias de crimen también son muy buenas para ella y le fascinan. Y sin duda ella les pide por favor que chequen estos géneros porque pues, considero que son muy buenas historias. And now your turn, Brenda. What is your favorite genres to read and write?
Well, my favorite genres are definitely literary fiction and horror fiction. I try to read everything, but those are the genres I gravitate toward. And in the last couple of years, I've become quite a fan of Latino horror, which tends to blend both literary and horror fiction. My favorite is Gabino Iglesias, who just won a Bram Stoker Award, but I also love Mariana Enriquez, who is Argentinian, Silvia Moreno Garcia, who is Mexican. And horror is a very interesting genre because it's very tropey. We got ghosts, we got haunted houses, too many tropes to count. But I found it's one of the most original genres despite this. Perhaps because it's based on an emotion, horror, instead of a limiting structure. And at the end of the day, horror lets you process all the terrible things that happen in the world through a mirage. It makes real life horror more palatable, and it even allows space for political criticism and protest without having to risk your life in the process.
Okay, okay.
Bueno, mis géneros favoritos son la ficción literaria y la ficción de horror, aunque trato de leer todo. La verdad es que siempre como que gravito hacia esos géneros. Últimamente me ha encantado sobre todo el horror latino, que justo mezcla la ficción literaria con la de horror. Hay muchísimos autores que me encantan, pero pues los que más me gustan son Gabino Iglesias, que ganó un Bram Stoker Award, y Mariana Enríquez, que es argentina. Y bueno, el horror es uno de los géneros que tiene muchos como tropes, no sé cómo se llama en español, pero bueno, como casas embrujadas, fantasmas, como estos elementos típicos que siempre terminan reapareciendo, ¿no? Demonios, pero al final no deja de ser un género muy original porque es basado en una emoción y no en una estructura limitada, y al final ayuda a que los horrores de la vida real sean más fáciles de procesar, y también pues te ayuda a explicarte por lo mismo a ti mismo el mundo, y puedes hacer crítica política sin tener que arriesgar tu vida.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you so much, Stacy. Amigos y amigas, pues aquí estamos viendo, o sea, de nuevo, estos géneros que estamos viendo, que nos permiten comunicarnos. These genres, I think, as you said, Brenda and Stacy, permit us to tell us stories that maybe we haven't heard, maybe also we can give a new perspective, and also giving us heroes that existed in real life. Again, I put this example of Robert Bruce McMillan, that I love that character. Now I'm going to love that character for forever, Stacy. And also, these stories, as you told, Brenda, that maybe giving this new spin so you can write out something about political or not risking your life also, I think is very important because you tell many stories, and I think the only thing that stops you is when you don't have creativity. I think that's the thing. Amigos y amigas, Stacy y Brenda nos acaban de contar estas inspiraciones de escribir estas historias, cómo vemos para crear nuevas cosas y que nos giving us some greetings, and also asking OG Mitchell, Brenda, have you read Thomas Ligotti?
No, not yet.
So that's your answer, OG. OG, also, I want to tell you, Brenda, he's a really big friend of us, of Stacy and me. I think OG is going to be in the next Literature Today programs, but I'm working on that because I really want OG in those, and also you, Brenda. Amigos y amigas, nuestro gran amigo OG Meshel nos mandó un saludo aquí, viendo también el Congreso Indai, y por supuesto, lo que queremos es conocer diferentes escritores, ¿no? Y bueno, ahorita le preguntó a Brenda si conocía a Thomas Ligotti, pueden checarlo, y bueno, OG Meshel says, I highly recommend it. Nos recomienda bastante el libro de las historias de Thomas Ligotti. The next question, Stacy and Brenda, for this great Congress. La siguiente pregunta es esta. ¿Me podrían decir lo siguiente? Brenda and Stacy, whatever you want to answer. About these genres, who is your favorite? This is an extra question. Who is your favorite author and why? ¿Cuál es su autor favorito y por qué? Stacy or Brenda?
Oh, well, you know me. I'm gonna say Steve Berry or Dan Brown. Either way, I can go either way with those books. I absolutely love historical fiction. I also love a little bit of Brad Mitzler. He's really a great author. So, you know, The Amber Room really kicked it off for me by Steve Berry, and maybe there was a whole other genre out there, a historical fiction genre, and that's really what pulled me into this and to be able to write it. So, yeah, those are my favorite, and you know, just love the mystery of it and love being able to tie in real historical events into fiction.
Ya lo escucharon, amigos y amigas. Stacy nos comentó que Dan Brown es uno de sus favoritos y considero completamente eso, que sí. We the Da Vinci Code, a great book. It's a really recommended book. And also I love the Tom Hanks adaptation. And for you, Brenda, your favorite book, ¿cuál es tu libro favorito? ¿Tu escritor favorito?
I think my favorite writer is Gabino Iglesias, definitely. I mean, I have many, but he really made an impression on me with his book, The Devil Takes You Home, in which he blends Latino culture with US culture, which is something that I try to do in my stories. And he uses like a lot of Spanish in dialogue, but he contextualizes it in a way that the reader is not lost. And half of the book is the setting of the first half is in the US and the second half is in Mexico. And he adds like a lot of folklore and Mexican legends, and he even talks about the chupacabras and stuff, and but makes it like really terrifying. So I thought it was brilliant and something I really aspire to. Bueno, uno de mis escritores favoritos, porque la verdad no puedo tener solo uno, es Gabino Iglesias. La verdad es que me encantó su libro de The Devil Takes You Home. Creo que todavía no se traduce al español, pero esperemos que pronto. Salió apenas hace un año y medio. Y en este libro él mezcla la cultura justo anglosajona con la cultura mexicana y usa muchísimo folclore mexicano, muchas leyendas como el chupacabras, pero de una forma que de verdad sí da miedo, sí mueve a uno. Y sí, no, me encantó. Es un escritor al que volteo a ver cuando hago mis historias.
Muchas gracias, Brenda. Thank you again, Stacy and Brenda. In my case, my favorite author, it's a tie between Santiago García Clairac author of The Invisible Book. I already told you, Stacy, about that. El Libro Invisible, Santiago García Clairac, un gran autor. And also, I think James Dashner with The Maze Runner, because I love The Maze Runner a lot. The last program in Literature Today, Stacy and I had this big conversation for an hour of these authors, and I really became a fanboy talking about this author and this book because I am a really big fan. Soy muy fan en serio de Maze Runner, de James Dashner, porque pues es acción, ¿no? Y Santiago García Clairac, pues es más fantasía para los niños y muy buenas historias realmente. Les recomiendo mucho En un lugar Atocha, Somewhere in Atocha. It's a really great book. The perspective of a kid seeing the March 11th bombings in Atocha in Spain. It was a really great book, so I really recommend it. And now, the next questions, Stacy and Brenda. What themes you usually touch when writing? Please, Stacy o Brenda, ¿cuáles temas tocan en sus libros cuando empiezan a escribir?
All right, so the themes that I usually touch on when I'm writing my books are first and foremost community and family. There's some justice thrown in there and also some good versus evil. I mean, you get to see that in book 1, Dividing Ridge. It's a lot of justice and community and definitely good versus evil as they're trying to find who killed this young woman. And then the second novel, Devil's Ridge, is family and community and justice. There's not so much good versus evil in there because my antagonist is kind of like an anti-hero. He's doing what he believes to be right, deep down in his heart, and just trying to help his family out. But Patriots Ridge is more about family and community, and it does take justice in order to find out who killed Wilkes County Sheriff Colby Hendricks. But those are my main themes throughout this series. And it probably will continue on in other books, but probably not quite as much.
Okay, Stacy. About Patriots Ridge, again, I really love that book. The ending, I'm not going to spoil it, but it really got me, the ending. I think it was very symbolic, but I'm going to spoil it. Okay. Amigos y amigas, Stacy nos acaba de contar que los temas de sus historias principalmente son la comunidad y la familia. En Dividing Ridge, un gran libro de ella, se lo recomiendo mucho, ella nos toca este tema de el bien contra el mal. Pero en su secuela de Patriots Ridge, no tanto, realmente son antihéroes, al final de cuentas. Pero de nuevo en el tercer libro, Patriots Ridge, ahí sí se toca pues el tema de lo que es el bien contra el mal. Y ella nos comenta que va a haber posiblemente no. And now, Brenda, tell us what themes you usually touch.
Well, I'm a a darker author, so I love writing about domestic life. I think especially for women and children, that's where most of the horror comes from. What happens when the place that's supposed to be safe is the place where the horror happens. And I'm also fascinated by the fact that it's other humans that make spaces terrifying most of the time. And in my stories, it's sometimes humans, sometimes not. But if home is horror, then there's nowhere to escape to. And I also like to touch upon femininity and subvert social expectations, like to write about women who hate being mothers, who hate being wives, who regret the life that they think they chose, but was actually imposed on them. And I also like to touch upon the social injustice that happens in my country, although that theme doesn't appear in all of my stories, as opposed to the theme of domesticity, which does happen to pop up in almost each and every one of them. Bueno, me gusta mucho hablar sobre la vida doméstica porque pienso que es el lugar donde ocurre el mayor horror sobre todo para las mujeres y los niños, y me gusta pensar como qué pasa cuando el lugar que se supone que es tu lugar más seguro es donde ocurre el horror. Y también me parece fascinante pensar en que el horror normalmente viene de otras personas, ¿no? Normal, a veces pensamos como, sobre todo cuando escribimos horror, como que hay un fantasma o hay un demonio, y a veces sí lo hago en mis historias, pero pues en la vida real, o sea, normalmente es otra persona de la misma familia la que ocasiona el terror. Y también me gusta hablar de la feminidad y de mujeres que no hacen lo que se espera de ellas, que no les gusta ser madres o que no les gusta ser esposas. Y también hablo a veces de la justicia social en mi país, pero ese no es un tema que aparezca en cada historia, al contrario de la domesticidad, que sí es un tema que siempre está presente.
Sin duda, Brenda, both themes, Stacy and Brenda, are really, I think I agree. Is especially in the social commentary. Also, my stories have the social commentary in Hurricane 207 especially, and also the family theme. The family theme, I think, is in the bad light, as you told Brenda, and also the good light of Stacy. This good versus evil, also the monsters, them. I think it's really, really nice. Yo estoy completamente de acuerdo. O sea, a final de cuentas, estas historias puedes darle diferentes personajes y, pues, a final de cuentas, o sea, nos basamos en diferentes cosas de cómo la vida nos cambia, how life changes, ¿no? How life has impacts. And I think that's what makes a writer different, ¿no? So you create your stories, touching things is really nice, ¿no? The next question, and now this is a question from OG Michelle again, for both. Or first Stacy and later you, Brenda. Do you write on paper or do you use a computer or a digital device, and why? ¿Escriben en papel o en computadora o algún otro objeto electrónico? Please, Stacy.
So I use a mix. It just sort of depends. If it's poetry, sometimes it's paper. If it's the book or the novel that I'm working on and outlining, it could be the computer or my telephone. And the reason for that is because I have a lower back issue, so sitting a long period of time is really difficult. But if I can be on my phone and type out some things when inspiration strikes, that's always a great thing. But so it's kind of a mix. It just sort of depends. But there's nothing like pen and paper, I don't think.
Agree completely, Stacy. Stacy nos acaba de decir que, pues, a final de cuentas, pues puede ser en cualquiera de los dos, o sea, papel o computadora, pero pues a final de cuentas el papel siempre va a dar una pequeña ventaja. Brenda, in your case?
Yeah, I agree with Stacy. I use both. I'm actually going to show you. I'm writing a novel right now, and I actually have the house layout, the blueprint layout, because I'm very bad with spaces, and sometimes I'm like, how did they go from this room to this room, and what's in between? So I need like the visual guidance. And
that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Otherwise, it's a mess. And I also write like longhand for my outlining and for some notes. But when I'm drafting, like the actual draft, I have to do it on the computer just because, as Stacy mentioned, there's just not enough time to longhand write an entire draft. Like, there's no way. Pues la verdad es que uso una combinación, me gusta mucho escribir a mano, justo estoy haciendo una novela y uso como los planos de la casa porque si no es muy confuso, pues hay muchas cosas que entran a consideración cuando estás escribiendo un libro, ¿no? De que los personajes, el setting, los 5 sentidos, entonces aparte pensar en cómo está formada la casa, pues es muy complicado, entonces es mejor tenerlo en papel y pues algunas notas y eso lo hago en papel, pero la verdad es que no hay suficiente tiempo para escribir todo un libro en papel, entonces sí uso la computadora también.
Absolutamente, Brenda. I agree completely. In my case, Stacy, the blueprint is the best thing I have ever seen. Okay. Yeah, in my case, Brenda and Stacy, I agree. When I started writing when I was a kid, I usually wrote in a short book, and also I'm going to confess, recently I have this problem because I wrote a lot. The Brigade DXT sequel, I lost the advance I had. I had 100 pages written and I lost everything. So I start writing again from the scratch. But I had the story in my head, so it's not that complicated. But I really suffered because I had a lot of already completed things I had already running. No, but I agree completely. You can create whatever you want, so your story can work. Estoy completamente de acuerdo. A final de cuentas, pues cuando tú creas una historia, pues te puedes basar en escribir en papelito, en la computadora, pues a final de cuentas son diferentes cosas, ¿no? Y yo recientemente pues perdí mi novela, la secuela, pero bueno, estoy volviendo a escribirla para no perder de nuevo. And thank you again, OG, for your questions. You can ask everything you want, OG, and also, again, I told you're going to be invited for the next, I think, Literature Today program. Hopefully you like it. The next question, Brenda and Stacy, do you like short stories or long stories? ¿Les gustan las historias cortas o las historias largas? Please, Stacy.
So it really depends on the story and the style of writing. I do enjoy short stories if they're well written. I really admire individuals who can write these things because I have a tendency to think about after the story, like how far could I take this? But so the longer the story and the books, the better, because, I just like to get into the characters and their backstories and really just like to immerse myself in a good novel.
Okay, of course. Amigos y amigas, Stacy nos acaba de comentar, pues a final de cuentas depende de la historia, ¿no? O sea, it depends of the story, ¿no? Stacy, it depends of the story, how short, how long you want to write it, ¿no? I think, for example, with Petrus Rich, I love the length of the story because it was really interesting from the beginning to the end. And that's the only thing I'm going to tell you. Again, I'm going to, please read that book because it's really amazing. Sin duda estoy de acuerdo con Stacy, al final de cuentas se basa esto pues de la longitud de la historia, de cómo funciona. Brenda, your opinion?
Yeah, I think if it works, and the story needs to be as long as it has to be. But I think as a writer, you should be like conscious of what you're doing. Like if your intent is to write a short story, then you should mind not having more than, let's say, 4 characters, to have just one central conflict. Like I've seen a lot of people opening too many subplots and adding too many characters and then giving an open ending, and it's like this would work great in a novel, but but not as a short story. So just my suggestion would be like to be mindful of that, but any length is fine as long as the story works. I love reading short length and longer works as well. Sí, yo creo que una historia, pues cuando funciona, funciona, no importa la longitud, pero sí hay que estar conscientes como escritor de que si estás escribiendo un cuento corto, no tener demasiados personajes, tratar de cerrar el final, no dejar un final abierto, algunas cosas como técnicas que luego pues se nos van porque estamos muy emocionados con la historia, ¿no? Y de igual forma, ¿no? Pues si tienes una novela, pues puedes hacer muchísimo más cosas. Entonces, pues nada más tener en cuenta qué tipo de historia quieres contar y pues basado en eso.
Completamente de acuerdo, Brenda. I agree completely with both Brenda and Stacy. I think for the story, as long the story works, the length, I think it doesn't matter. For example, in my case, Hurricanes 207 was a short story at the beginning, but then I really wrote long books later because the story needed that. So I can write all about I told in my mind. So I realized I needed to work with the length, whatever of the story, ¿no? A final de cuentas uno hace una historia y pues quieres hacer estas cosas más grandes, más cortas, dependiendo pues obviamente de lo que permita, ¿no? And the last question, because we're finishing this great panel with both of you, Stacy and Brenda, any advice for those who start writing? ¿Algún consejo para quienes estén comenzando a escribir? Please, Stacy.
So my advice would be, if you're hoping to publish, build your social media and promote the book or books ahead of other launch as well. Be sure that you have beta readers and individuals lined up to help you edit and review, because you're going to need those things. And invest in certain things as well, because your book's a business. Invest in an editor, or maybe even a formatter or cover design artist, and take advantage of those services by visiting the writing communities of Twitter and Instagram. There's lots of great folks out there who are willing to help and provide services.
Absolutely, Stacy. Amigos y amigas, pues sin duda Stacy nos comenta que pues ustedes que están comenzando a escribir, acérquense como la comunidad de escritores que están en Twitter, en Instagram, acérquense con sus editores, o sea, si se puede, que les apoyen para editar, para hacer estas carátulas. Al final de cuentas estás haciendo un libro para la gente, para que se disfrute y sobre todo que estés orgulloso. In your case, Brenda?
Yeah, I completely agree with Stacy, especially on the part of the community and the beta readers, and allow people to read your work and to critique it. It's a vital
In
part.
your case, Brenda? Absolutely.
And I also think you should read, but read as a writer, like analyze openings, analyze your structure, what do you find compelling, and well, also have fun, enjoy the process, because writing is hard, and I think like we do it not for the money. Like, you can make money, but we don't do it for the money, and we don't do it for the price. We do it because we love it. So enjoy the process, and even though it's stressful sometimes, try to find the silver lining in each part of the process. Pues sí, estoy de acuerdo con Stacy. Es vital poder mostrar tu trabajo a otros escritores y que lo critiquen. Yo creo que eso es lo que a mí me ha hecho crecer más como escritora. Y sé que es difícil, pero hay que hacerlo. Y también hay que leer mucho, pero leer como escritor. O sea, hay que analizar cómo abren las obras, cómo terminan, analizar la estructura, como con un ojo crítico. O sea, porque a veces es muy fácil leer por entretenimiento, pero pues eso no ayuda mucho si lo que quieres es crecer como escritor. Y también lo más importante, en mi opinión, es disfrutar el proceso, porque para eso estamos aquí. La verdad es que escribir es muy difícil, entonces es algo que hacemos por amor, entonces tenemos que amar el proceso siempre, aunque a veces nos haga llorar.
Completamente, Brenda. Amigos y amigas, pues vemos estas dos perspectivas para escribir. I agree with both of you on this thing of it's complicated, but not so hard if you have passion, I think. If you have passion for writing, it's going to work. And if you really want to tell a story, many people are going to really want to hear that story. Mucha gente va a querer escuchar tus historias siempre y cuando pues tengas esta pasión por escribir.
Hola, estoy aquí nuevamente. Creo que Darío tiene un poco de problemas con internet.
Gracias de nuevo. we're going to answer his question. What do you both do?
Bueno, ya desapareció Darío de pantalla, hay un problema. Brenda, si puedes traducir, te agradecería.
Sí, claro.
Bueno, tenemos que dar por cerrado este bloque, así que vamos a agradecerle tanto a Stacy como a Brenda. Parece que volvió nuestro coordinador.
Sorry, Stacy and Brenda, I was reading. Sorry, it was my internet. Can I finish? ¿Puedo terminar esta cosa que puso Oji, Graciela?
Sí, justo estaba por cerrar el bloque, puedes hacerlo.
Graciela.
Bueno, ha quedado nuevamente congelado. Bueno, salió nuevamente. Bueno, vamos a tener que cerrar el bloque de esta manera. Voy a agradecer tu traducción, Brenda. Thanks, Stacy. Muchas gracias, Brenda. Le vamos a decir a Darío muchas gracias. Lo tengo congelado aquí en el estudio, así que no voy a ponerlo en el aire por ello. Y espero que pronto nos veamos nuevamente en otra actividad de Indai.
Thank you, Stacy.
Sí,
claro. Thank you, Stacy and Darío. Darío is having technical problems, so he's not going to be able to close this event, but Graciela is here to say goodbye and say thank you for everything, for this space and being here with us today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much again for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed getting to know Brenda and getting to talk about her books as well and hearing from her. And very sorry for Dario's internet trouble. Technology is great till it doesn't work, but I appreciate it.
Sorry again, Brenda and Stacy. Thank you so much for today. Gracias, Graciela. Gracias, Brenda. Gracias, Stacy, por esto. Y amigos y amigas, perdonen las dificultades técnicas con mi internet. Nos vemos entonces.
Así es, yo también tengo dificultades hoy. Así que besitos. Muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Sí. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Bien, de esta manera hemos llegado al final de este bloque. Por el día de hoy hemos terminado. Mañana seguiremos con otros bloques, presentación de libros, conversatorios sobre escultores y en la escultura. También tendremos conversatorios, así que actividades muy interesantes. Los invitamos a seguir acompañándonos en este congreso. Es el cuarto ya, Congreso Internacional de Arte Indai. Nos despedimos.
Curso intensivo de podcast en G-Dance Academy, 100% online, 2 módulos, certificación digital, aula virtual, producción, edición, marketing, monetización y grabación. Curso intensivo de podcast en G-Dance Academy, plataforma educativa online.
Bye.